Hi everybody, a very warm welcome to Life, Loss and Hope. Thank you for joining us. In the last video, I talked about capacity and how in grief and loss our mental and physical capacity is depleted. Acknowledging this physiological fact and realizing that there's nothing wrong with us, or that we're incapable, or losing our abilities, or going mad was like a relief for me, and was the catalyst for intentionally looking for ways to care for my vulnerable self. Just as we would plug in our mobile phone to recharge, fill our cars with fuel, there's a need for us to nurture and care for ourselves in our daily lives, and is especially important when we're grieving. How do you feel about that word, self-care? It can, for many of us, engender negative feelings or be perceived as an alien concept, perhaps synonymous with being selfish, self-centered, or even a more feminine thing to do. We can all hear those words, don't be selfish, don't think of others before yourself. We may be conditioned from an early age that anything involving the word self is not acceptable, and therefore I often see people's eyes just glaze over when they're encouraged to practice self-care. The term self-care might seem like self-explanatory and a very simple concept, but however it's not. In a society that values and promotes productivity and doing over being, it can be very hard to put into practice. The danger, I think, is that self-care can be viewed as another task, a performance-rated activity, and therefore you can feel like a failure when you haven't been able to do it. To avoid this notion of self-care being another task or thing to achieve, I prefer to conceptualize it as developing a lifestyle of kindness, compassion, and acceptance of myself throughout the day with no guilt, shame, or judgment. So what does self-care actually mean? The definition is defined as recognizing and taking active responsibility to attend to your physical and mental health, to promote well-being, preventing illness and coping with life, grief, or disability, positively impacting our health in the current and in the future. So let's explore three main components that we can develop and weave these changes into our lifestyle. So these are caring for ourselves in your various life roles, and then compassionate action and thoughts. So let's take a look at one of these at a time. Firstly, caring for yourself. I think it's so tough in grief to take care of our needs for two main reasons that are unique to grief and loss. Firstly, in the shock, sadness, anxiety and exhaustion, we can feel like we are disconnected from our old self, our old world. It's like we're on autopilot, distanced from all pleasure, all joy, and the colour in the world. We can feel low, unmotivated and depressed, like there is often a void of not knowing or being able to connect with even those things that you once found most pleasurable. Secondly, many of the things we do to take care of our well-being were done with a loved one, for instance, hiking, walking together, having coffee, visiting the seaside, doing a hobby. Some of those familiar activities are just too painful to engage in alone and can be even more distressing. For me, it began with small things: cooking myself a nutritious meal, setting the table, lighting a candle, folding a napkin, just to honour myself, or walking, but not one of our favourite walks, and my own pleasures, a short run, a bubble bath, having a quiet time or a nap, listening to podcasts that were uplifting, reading scriptures, praying and writing in my journal. I believe for many, like myself, it had to be an intentional decision even when we don't feel like it. Every day in its most basic form, I decided to start to self-care and become more aware of my own physical, psychological, social, emotional and spiritual needs. and then finding small ways to follow through on tending to those needs. And as I said before, even though it felt pointless, it was good to do. So it may help you to think about what nurtures you personally and to write a list to refer back to, perhaps a walk in nature, meditation, praying, exercise, painting, photography, or buying yourself some treats like chocolate, flowers, a hug from the grandchildren, having your tea in a teapot. So many ordinary, everyday things. The ordinary captured can become extraordinary in living again. And there are so many things to be thankful for, and thinking of 3 blessings every day, writing them down, can lift our spirits. So to start with, the things on my list didn't seem to bring me any immediate pleasure. There's no quick fix, but in the daily doing of those things that had previously nurtured me, there was a healing. Holding on to the belief that life will evolve, and gradually a sense of well-being crept up. Moments of happiness started to seep through, and the colour came back into life. Caring for yourself also means making compassionate choices to do what is best for you. It may not always be the thing that's easiest to do, and not always the thing you feel you should do. Sometimes caring for yourself means making a difficult decision, which can be challenging and make you feel uncomfortable. It might mean setting boundaries, having a difficult conversation, saying no, standing up for something you believe, being honest about your feelings and avoiding certain relationships or breaking an old pattern. Caring for yourself means treating yourself with love, kindness and respect as a human being who is both imperfect and deserving of compassion. When you care for yourself, you allow yourself to be who you are with acceptance, flexibility and respect. Secondly, your various life roles are important to integrate this self-care into, because it's holistic. It involves every aspect of your life, not just your personal life. We often juggle many hats. We have responsibilities as a professional, a student, a parent, a partner, or a caretaker. So preventing exhaustion, stress overload, or occupational burnout is something so important. It can help by taking breaks at work, advocating for yourself, or asking a colleague for support. Although the self-care you do at work may differ from your home situation, it can still be integrated to help prevent that burnout and maintain your quality of work. In my role as a chaplain, we recognised this and invited nursing staff to a quiet 10-15 minutes in the chapel with breathing exercises, meditation, reflection and quiet space. And even though short, it was greatly appreciated, and it felt like an oasis of restoration in a busy day. Self-care impacts the people you care about and you care for. We live in an interconnected world where your health, mood, stress, joy, vitality does impact others. And as we are told on an aeroplane, put your own oxygen on before you help somebody else. It's so true. We can't pour from an empty cup. So remember that self-care matters for you in all your roles, and the compassion you give to yourself contributes to the overall compassion in the world. How do you give yourself compassionate action and thoughts? Self-care is not just about behaviour and the things we do, but it also involves our mindset, self-talk and attitude towards ourselves. And when it comes to caring for ourselves, we think of doing things. However, action is not always the solution. Generally, we're so hard on ourselves and so influenced by social media and the world around us that we live in, that we can fall into the danger of creating perfect standards and expectations that are impossible to meet. Being good enough and being our best is enough. Tell yourself that and be kind to yourself. If you miss the mark and it's not fully achieved, it's okay. In grief, it's okay not to be okay. Give yourself the grace to rest, cry, feel your emotions, not to perform, and just be where you are, getting through each moment the best you know how, with kindness to yourself. Our words and thoughts really do matter and can form the reality around us. If we're constantly criticising and judging our performance and failures and saying negative things about ourselves, it's very destructive. So please say positive things about yourself in the morning, throughout the day, and remember to practice self-calming by saying aloud, I'm safe, I'm loved, and I'm going to be okay.